So our first point is that there has to be proper accounting for a true cost-reflective tariff. The CB has made excessive profits in 2024 due to inaccurate forecasting, which has to be clawed back to the customer per the tariff methodology. But the CB accounting systems need, as other people have mentioned, to reflect this properly rather than booking revenue as income. Tariffs and accounts need to be aligned so that there is no loss recorded in Q1 2025, contrary to what is being shown today. Additional adjusting tariffs upward to compensate for the clawback that happened previously defeats the object of the exercise. We talk a lot about CB revenue and expenditure, but there's very little discussion about operational efficiency of the CB. The tariff methodology calls for efficiency of operations. Personnel costs, procurement costs, capital costs are all things that have been identified as being unreasonable and inefficient by the PCUSL, and these are supposed to be addressed. Optimizing of CapEx and OpEx CB is critical if we have to get a real cost-reflective tariff. On cash balances, the CB balance sheet shows around 50 billion in cash, yet at the same time the CB has large amounts of interest-paying debt. Customers should not be paying the cost for CB inefficiencies and inefficient handling of funds. 50% of CB interest is for delayed interest payments to IPP and NCRs. These need to be addressed so that we can have a proper actual tariff. We've talked about forecasting errors of the CB. PCUSL has identified the forecasting of hydro generation to be quote-unquote flawed. We don't see any improvement on this, and even we believe there is an error of around 20% even on the Jan to May figures, an assumption by the CB that there's going to be a drought later this year. None of this is backed by data. So if we have inaccurate forecasting, we will continue to get into this cycle of big price increases, big price drops. As was mentioned earlier, what industry needs is consistent, stable and real pricing. CB purchases from the CPC. Again, Jaff raised this at our last one. It's in the PCUSL notes as well. I believe the CB was directed by PCUSL to have fuel supply contracts put in place, and so that we can take away agents' commission and evaporation losses, and we can identify the true costs. We urge the PCUSL to act on its own directive and make sure that fuel supply contracts are verified and established. Renewable energy on solar, in line with the government's commitment for 70% renewables, we call on the CB to urgently upscale the commissioning of renewable energy, including rooftop solar. The industry has long called for power wheeling and open access, and this is always nearly there and not there. This will be the single biggest catalyst to move renewable energy and be a conduit for investment in the renewable energy sector. Power wheeling regulations, there is some conjecture about the act, but power wheeling should be in place. And we urge CB to ensure that, we urge the PUCSL to ensure that the CB puts this in place as urgently as possible. Earlier this year in April and May, a number of our solar rooftop manufacturers who have rooftop facilities were tasked to curtail solar PV at the request to manage system stability. These solar PV systems are put in place as part of company commitments to meet brands and brand sustainability requirements and to curtailing the supply impacts. By restricting these, we fail on our commitments to our customers, and it also impacts our revenue. The current arrangements are not dispatch sources, and if this requirement is to continue, then the agreements need to be converted to a dispatchable source agreement with a curtailment or a capacity fee. Finally, we also raise the fact that I think for some time we have been talking about dispatch audits from the CB. These are not being done. And as consumers, we are struggling to understand why, when things identified by the PCUSL in previous tariff consultations have been documented, when these are not being followed through, why are we as industry being susceptible to these high swings one way or the other? Our call is for PCUSL to please use the remit that it has and ensure that we as consumers have stable, accurate pricing. Thank you.
සුතියබට මා ආරාධනා කර සිටිනවා ශ්‍රී ලංකා ජාතික වාණිජ්‍ය මණ්ඩලයේ නන්දක බුද්ධිපාල මහතාට අදහස් දක්වන මෙන්. Sri Lanka Jatika Vanja Mandali Sabapati.
I need a small correction. I'm not the president, but one of the past presidents. Thank you very much, Public Utilities Commission, for us to kind of give this kind of opportunity. I think repeatedly we heard about set of accounts and the accountability and the records and not data, not availability, and so many things from every other speaker. And we talk about maybe whether it is cost reflective pricing, we talk about whether it is cost recovery, but there is no costing. That's the kind of a huge issue that we have at the moment. I have been sitting on the accounting standard implementation and interpretation committee. Maybe there were one or two different names in between, but from 2008. At the same time, in the recent past, maybe so many years, I have been sitting with the Cost and Management Accounting Standard Board with CMA also. So I can very clearly see there's a huge difference, because when you look at maybe financial accounting, you really look at the set of accounts that you are going to publish. Then your entire system is kind of thing which is revolved around that. You don't look at forecasting, you don't look at cost efficiencies, you never look at maybe different the segments, what kind of power generation cost that is going to be there in different segments or different plants. So then we don't have any kind of benchmarks to see whether we are cost efficient or whether we are having huge amount of other issues, inefficiencies, where the consumer will have to pay for it. So these are kind of very fundamental big issues in our hands. I believe that the Commission will look at this particular aspect. We just depend on maybe set of financial accounts which were published but not audited even last year's set of accounts. But not only maybe the financial account and then there again audited financial accounts, but costing, and it has been elaborated by the president of the Cost and the Management Accounting Standard Board also. We need to have some transparent way of looking at the auditing of the cost accounting, the pricing, cost accounting records as well. If they are not in existence, then it's going to be one of the very serious issues where you can't have any benchmark. We look at power generation plan, we look at other forecasts. Where is the audit? Who's going to audit it? So we really need to have it, otherwise this problem is never going to be resolved. So starting from there, now when you look at the people who are in manufacturing, we are talking about manufacturing economy, and manufacturing economy only having its maybe presence only 25 to 30% maximum. So when you have huge increases or volatility in the power pricing, so it's going to be extremely difficult for people to come up and do their costing, and they are not going to be competitive. Exporters also, they are not going to be competitive in their pricing, and then they will have huge amount of issues. So that particular aspect we really need to look at, rather than moving into maybe certain other aspects. I need to look at one particular aspect. Now when you look at the inflation condition of the country, now we are slowly in the month of May, there is a positive inflation. Earlier it has always been negative. Which are the factors? Not the food inflation. Food inflation is running about 5%. This is absolutely, this is energy. This is running into negative the territory about 9 to 10%. So that drags the inflation down. And then the transport, there again another 6 to 7% inflation was dragged down by these two factors. Basically coming from the energy price. The transport is something to do with the energy. So what we are trying to do now, when you look at maybe the total the debt repayment, like when you look at even 2025, estimated figure is 60% of the government revenue will go for the interest payments. Now this interest is very clearly connected to the inflation. Since we had negative inflation for last couple of months, even the central bank was able to cut down the policy rates by 0.5%, or couple of times they did it, even the last one they did it. So what will happen? Now by increasing the energy or the electricity price, what's going to happen? There will be ripple impact. It's going to be serious impact. And then there again, I don't think if you come in front of IMF and if you have to you need to explain very clearly, I don't know, it's not you that need to explain it, My personal experience, I have met up with them when it came to debt restructuring, and we had at least maybe about 5 to 10, maybe 10 interactions with IMF. If you explain it clearly, there is a possibility of them looking at it, but it's not kind of making a noise. You need to come up with actual economic factors. If you do certain things in the marketplace, that will drag down your GDP, but then finally debt sustainability is going to be prevented. It's extremely important for us to make a noise and make fact in front of the IMF also, if it is going to be impediment, because it's mentioned here, financial loss of the first quarter of 2025. It's mentioned here that this covers 8.2 billion financial loss incurred during the first quarter of 2025, described as a negative revenue adjustment to reflect operational losses and to comply with IMF program requirements. So maybe that interpretation can be ourselves, but that interpretation can be kind of contested. We can really explain it, because by doing so, 18.3 is a huge amount. Then mind you, each and every production, each and every service, they have so many other components. The value chain is huge. Each and every value chain, the part of the value chain, there will be increasing the cost when you do it. 18.3 is going to be huge burden. That huge burden, not only for the finance or not only for the business people, but it's going to be huge cost to the economy. You need to be extremely mindful, and we need to come up with maybe very possible solutions, giving the impact analysis very clearly. But at the last moment, I need to impress on one particular aspect of this cost accounting and the management accounting. When you don't have it, nothing can be predicted, because pricing is based on not the historical price. Pricing is based on the costing and management accounting. Thank you.